everyone. Welcome to Qobuz Live on Thursday, except it's only Wednesday. The reason we're doing it a day early is because we've got a really special product launch that we feel very privileged to be a part of. Our friends at Bowers and Wilkins are with us today. I'm David Solomon from Qobuz. Qobuz is a high-res streaming service. We've got over 60 million, I believe, songs now. We started with around 40 million. So as time has gone on, we have gotten so much more music, and most all of it these days, 60, 70, sometimes 80% of the music that we're getting every week on weekly releases is in high res. So it's just picking up huge amount of steam. So welcome. Let's see. Let me tell you about our pricing structure. Let's see. We got $14.99 per month, of course, and then we've just introduced a six-person family plan for $24.99 a month, which is under about $5 a person. So really good deal. And speaking of good deals, we've got a giveaway today that we'll be doing in a launch. We'll talk to you a little bit about that a little bit later. But the winner of the prize that we're going to give out, or the prizes that we're going to give out, will be picked by the best question asked. Try not to ask just a bunch of crazy questions. And we all know that we're not going to get to all of the questions. So stand by over the next couple of days. My guest, Andy Kerr, and myself will answer these questions. So yeah, we're going to be launching the 600 series. So we're really excited about that. I'd like to welcome my guest, Mr. Andy Kerr from Bowers and Wilkins. Andy, how are you, buddy?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Thanks for having me back
Cool.
on. I thought you'd never let me come back on after the last time around. So obviously I'm privileged and lucky to be here.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, that we had a great time, and then since then, I think we've talked a few times. It's so good to meet people that you have so much in common with, and our music. Even though there's an ocean separating us, and up until about 8, 9 weeks ago, you and I had never met. But
Sure.
as soon as we did, we just became just fast friends, and we just have so much to talk about. But it usually it revolves around the music. So Andy has shared some really great music with us, and today's no exception. We're going to unveil the new 600 series playlist that he's just put together. And Andy has got some, I don't know, I'd say extremely diverse taste. It's always a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah.
One of the albums you turned us on to last live stream was the Black Pumas.
hmm
And you would not believe, Andy, the conversations that we've had around that album. So many people have got it on a really quick playlist because it's just such a great thing. And so you've got some really good music for us this time as well.
Well, you know what? I hope so. But that's kind of what music should do, right? I mean, I think if we're being honest, we kind of allow ourselves sometimes to fall into a lazy trap, don't we? Where we kind of just stick with our go-tos. You know, we stick with the performers that, well, we know we ain't going to challenge as much, or they get played a lot, they get a ton of airtime, and there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But I like the idea of discovering as well. I mean, like we did last time around, and you get that. I think I said to it last time, right? You get this kind of thrill that's a bit like the thrill you had when you were a kid and you kind of first discovered the band that you was going to be your band for years to come, and you couldn't get that song out of your head for hours. And we spoke about that with Colors, the Black Pumas track, which just the most compelling piece of music. And that's hopefully what we're trying to do this time around as well with this new playlist. It's not about saying, hey, here's 25 great demo pieces that everybody knows and frankly you're probably bored
Oh,
of.
no. This one I don't think is going to be. This wouldn't be among the most highly played
No.
music out there, but it's all interesting. That's really what brought Andy and I together. So we'll be up. I'm being kind of selfish about the whole thing because it's only 7 or 8 o'clock at night, for me. But Andy, it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the last time we talked, you brought this to my attention. You were going, well, Dave, it's like, I think it's about 1:30 my time. So I'm going to have to, get off to bed. But we'll sit there and do this for hours, just talking about music.
Oh, yeah.
It's just something that just brings you together. And we have got something really, really special to announce with Bowers and Wilkins. We're going to today is the official launch of the brand new 600 series, right?
Yeah. Now, 600 series is something that's it's very special, I think, to me personally. I think it's special to a lot of my friends in the company and across our business, because it's, I don't know, if you like, it's like the kind of democratic face of the brand. Do you know what I mean? It's the kind of speaker that if you had no idea about what to buy, or if you were looking for like your first system, your first true stereo, this is the kind of speaker that you go to, right? It's always been a value. It's always been attainable, affordable. I genuinely did have a pair of these back in the day when prior to my time actually at Bowers, and that's, I think, true for a lot of people who work at the company, and it's been around for a ton of years, 25 years this year. So that's why we're choosing to celebrate it, choosing to commemorate it with the anniversary edition. Hopefully it make it even more successful for the next 25 years.
It's fantastic. It's such a great entry level speaker. This is the series that you guys have come up with. Andy, can you just take us through the speakers real quick?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is, if you have like a toolkit of speakers, I mean, that's like any model range, right? So if you think about a smaller application, kind of like the speakers that are in the study here right behind me, so something where you want it on a bookshelf, or something that fits conveniently into a smaller space, can also be mounted on a stand, then that's the entry-level model, which is the 607 S2 anniversary edition, as we call it. So that's a 5-inch cone. And that doesn't sound like a ton of cone area, but actually for a lot of people in a lot of rooms, that's fine. That's going to be more than enough energy. And they surprise you, actually. They have a ton of enthusiasm and a ton of energy for their size. They really surprise you. And they're 700 a pair. If you step up to the 6.5-inch cone size, you get a slightly larger model called 606. 606 is the hero of that video that we played right at the start as well. And the reason for that is, I just don't think there's probably a better value loudspeaker in our portfolio, or maybe even anywhere, because it's like a killer blend, that killer proportion of being like the right size and having enough energy to really fill a room. So you maybe wouldn't want to put it on a bookshelf. It's maybe just that little tad too big. But it's on a stand, or perhaps in a good space in a room. It's still not that intrusive. It doesn't take up a ton of space, but has a great sound, a great value sound, and does a lot of good things really well. And you can get those they're 900 a pair. And then you step up to the tower, which is the 603. And that's as you would expect, it's a tower. It's a floor standing model. It's got twin bass cones, dedicated mid-range cones. So that fills a room pretty well. Obviously ideal if you want to play, deep music, if you want to have a higher volume music, a higher sound pressure level. And you can also partner it with center channel and rear speakers to create a home theater system. And they're 2,000 pair. And then we have a center channel, clearly, as I just mentioned, which is the HTM6, and that kind of completes the set for theater applications. So it's a pretty simple range, but that's fine. The focus is on the quality of the componentry, the focus, which is kind of what we're to some extent hoping to celebrate in that piece again that you played at the start. The focus is on really high quality bespoke Bowers and Wilkins technologies that you can't get anywhere else, that you can't get from any other brand. But again, keep saying it, but at that attainable price, because that's the key to all of this. This is supposed to democratize who we are and what we do and make it accessible. And that's hopefully what we're trying to achieve.
This is the thing I like about this kind of a speaker. It really stands on its own. This is a relatively simple system, and in hi-fi, you and I were talking about this a little while ago, and some of the forums, people would almost embarrass other people, which is ridiculous to me, about having a speaker under $100,000 or whatever they happen to have. But you know something, you can make a fantastic high-end system out of this. And comparatively speaking, this is high-end. It's just not at, crazy, crazy prices.
You know what? I think the hi-fi industry frustrates the life out of me. We've spoken about this in the last one, but I'm going to say it again. I mean, I've been like you, I've been in the hi-fi industry for a ton of years, going all the way back. Now, if you took like a cross section of society and kind of picked those people and asked them a bunch of questions, and one of them was like, name something that's cool, fair chance a good number of those people would say music. Yet somehow the thing that people buy to reproduce that music has allowed itself to kind of not become cool. You know, a lot of people look at me funny when I say I work in the hi-fi industry, you know, whereas I think if I said I worked in the fashion industry, or maybe I made cameras, or I worked at, I don't know, motorbikes or something like that, there would be a different perception. And I challenge why that should be. So I think part of that is our own doing. Part of that is us as people who are interested in audio, choosing to communicate in ways that put ordinary people off, choosing to impose rules that make ordinary people feel like it's challenging, feel like it's too difficult. And that's just wrong, because, and again, listen, I said this last time, and it's the truth. You put an ordinary person who's never listened to a great quality stereo system down in front of something like this, and they'll be blown away. They'll just be amazed, and they'll be reaching out and trying to touch the sound. They'll be unable to kind of quantify where that scale of music is coming from, because sadly,
this is
a lot
the
of
thing.
people is outside their world, you know.
That's a really great point, because there are so many people that really don't know that experience, especially people that like my kids that not necessarily like my kids because they've grown up around hi-fi, but certainly my kids' age, around in the teenage years. I've got one that's just about to go to college, and then one next year that's going to college, and that most of the time there it's just a earbud kind of a world. But when I set my kids down in front of my systems and talk to them about what an image is supposed to be,
Yeah.
and what sound staging really sounds like, these are things that you could somewhat get in headphones, but it's never the real thing. When you sit down, right, and you're presented with a real sound stage, first off, these two boxes shouldn't sound like music is coming through them. They should sound totally transparent. If you ever hear a pair of speakers that sound like they're coming from the speakers, the sound sounds like it's coming from the speakers, they're either poorly set up or they're bad speakers.
Yeah.
Speakers like this have got the ability to totally disappear. And I think once people get that taste that this kind of realism can happen in their own living room space, it really changes things. It gives you a totally different perspective. You can't unhear it, right?
Well, so, and this is also the point about this line that we talk about all the way through all of this, which is this idea of for the love of music, right? So we want, people listening to these things at home, people enjoying these things at home, to suddenly discover nuances and character in the music that they listen to at home that they hadn't previously heard. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing quite revelatory as listening to a piece of music that you grew up with, a piece of music and suddenly going for the first time, hey, wow, I can hear where the drummer was, or hey, wow, that guitarist really isn't that good, or whatever it might be. But it doesn't really matter what the point is. The point is, the more revealing the audio system is, the more the audio system gets out of the way, and the more the music, which is the reason why you buy the thing in the first place, comes to the fore, and the more it gives to you. And I think that, if anything, is the most compelling reason why you want to buy this stuff in the first place.
Well, so I see a couple of really, really distinct people that this product is absolutely perfect for. We've been talking about sort of the budding audiophile, and if you've got like a pair of buds and that's what you're listening to, I encourage you to at least go by and check out what this sounds like at one of the local places once we can get back in, and some of them are actually open now, and experience this this imaging for yourself. This voice that comes magically in between the speakers, even though there's not a speaker there, and how these kinds of things can fill the room. However, if you're already an audiophile and you want to get your kids involved with music, there's some ways to do this that will really make them interested in your system, as opposed to dad or Uncle Sam or grandpa or grandma or mom or whatever, just going, hey, come here and check the system out. Because so often, that just doesn't, if you do this wrong, what happens, Andy?
Well, you know what? I mean, it's exactly what we were talking about before. It's that that kind of inverted snobbery thing of like, oh, you don't have a real audio system because you haven't dropped $2,000 on cable. By the way, I'm not dissing cable there. That's just one example. But you know what I mean? That sense of like, oh, you can't appreciate good stereo music because you don't follow classical music. Just an example. Or you don't appreciate 50s jazz. Just an example.
Well, now, this is like how would you communicate this to your kids, to someone that you're really trying to show that this is a really enjoyable experience? Let them
play what they like. Let them play what they like. I mean,
so here's what happened to me. My daughter, this was a couple of years ago. My daughter, the great shot. I love this. We'll talk about these speakers. Keep that up though. So my daughter comes in to my room because I had, beckoned her. Rachel, come here. You gotta hear this. I mean, I was having an experience, right? I think it was Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue, one of my favorite jazz albums. And oh my gosh, it sounds so good. I had just had to share this with someone. I was by myself, totally by myself. And I'm going, Rachel, come in here. So she comes in and she listens to it. I said, no, sit right here for a second and hear the guitar and hear what it's doing. And she go, okay, Dad, yeah, that hear how the guitar's coming like right out of the middle. And she's going, yeah, okay, Dad. And she's going, and she's walking out of the door and she goes, you listen to crappy music. I'm going, what are you talking about? I listen to crappy music. I listen to the best music. Hold on, baby. What's your favorite thing right now? And it just kind of hit me, right? I mean, I couldn't believe it was like this thing. So she comes in and she goes, okay, look. I said, here, take this. And she pulls up some Shaggy tune. She sits down beside me. We both start doing this. It's the one with Chaka Khan in it, right? It's just this killer tune. And I'm going, hey, baby, did you know the girl in there? She's like 70 years old when she did this, but she's been a star her whole life. And so at that point, she puts her little head on my shoulder and we just, have a good time listening to the stuff she wants to listen to. So that's such a great point, Andy. Yeah. Play them what they want to listen to and then point out the cool stuff that you hear all around the speakers, not just coming out of those two boxes.
Well, it's like I said last time around. If those guys who didn't hear it, I think we'll reiterate again. Go to a dealer, right? Go and try this stuff, and bring your music. If you're not sure,
you don't have to actually bring it anymore, though, do you? You just
you know what I'm trying to say. Just go there with your playlist in mind.
Use your music, absolutely.
Yeah. Because ultimately, the dealer, if they're skilled at what they do, they'll pull a playlist out. They'll pull out some great demo cuts. That's what they're there to do. But at the same time, you're the person who's going to listen to it. And you know what? If what you want to listen to is dubstep at insane volume, then maybe the 607's not for you. That's just one example. Because a 5-inch cone has limits, But that's the only way you're going to find that out is if you bring the music that you want and you try it for yourself.
Yeah. So these are the big guys. So what are they like? I've noticed over the last, I don't know, maybe really it happens every single time, but really specifically over the last 2 or 3 iterations of each line, there have been these really radical upsteps in the performance of the speakers. I had mentioned to you last time when we had talked about the 700s, when I was going, the last series of 700s blew me away. And now this new series, I still, nobody's really open. So I haven't been able to hear. I can't wait. So what are the differences and the improvements that you guys have made on the 600 series?
So look, I think the key point about 600, and it's kind of what I said a little earlier on, is it's about trying to democratize Bowers and Wilkins technologies, right? So if you go back to our flagship, our premium line, our 800 series Diamond range, which is the model that, for example, is used in Abbey Road Studios, funny enough, used by a ton of other great music producers, creators, including Christopher Ray, who helped us create that concept piece that you saw at the start of the show from Ghost Lyoto, and many other acts as well. So we're highly connected with people who really understand music with our premium range of loudspeakers. That's the first point to understand. The second thing that we do that we think makes us unique is we then spend time cascading that technology into other products. So if you identified things that you liked in the 700 series that you hadn't heard in the preceding range, that's because the 700 series was benefiting from a ton of technology rolled down to it from the then prevailing 800 series diamond range. The same thing's true here, Dave, so with 600 series. So you're buying like I said, a value. You're buying like a $700 speaker or a $900 speaker. In the case of the $900 speaker, that's that 606 model, again, the one that's the hero piece. The cone in that loudspeaker, the main cone, is the exact same cone technology as we put inside our 805, one of our flagship models. It's made in the same factory, in the same process. And clearly there's a ton of other changes. Of course there are. We're hitting a sub $1,000 value, so we have to do certain things to change the story, right? But that cone is proprietary Bowers & Wilkins technology. It's something we developed ourselves, we own ourselves, we manufacture ourselves. We call it the Continuum cone. And if you think it's a weird name, well, you have to blame me because I came up with it. But anyway, and it's something that we, are very proud to introduce wherever we possibly can. We're rolling it into other models of loudspeakers too. And what it will give you, sorry, long answer, but this is the key point, is what it will give you is an insight into the transparency and the accuracy and the realism of sound that you get from really premium reference grade studio quality loudspeakers like the 800D3, but a much more affordable sticker price.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this to you on our last live stream that I had the absolute honor and privilege of visiting the Bowers & Wilkins factory a few years ago. And the technology behind your speakers really was, to me, quite humbling. I'd owned a speaker company at one point, and one of the higher ups, you remember Joe Atkins, came to me once, and he's going, "You're getting in my way. Why are you coming out with this crap? We have real speakers." I'm thinking, what are you talking about? These are real speakers. I got 2 speakers in there. There's a cabinet. But then I go to finally, this is maybe a decade later, I go to the Bowers & Wilkins factory, and I am absolutely, totally blown away at every single station and all of the technology. And I finally understood what it was actually Joe Atkins. I understood what Joe was talking about.
Yeah.
And it's such a great experience. Folks, if you don't know, Bowers & Wilkins has this unbelievably high-tech factory in the south of England. And I've been to a lot of factories. This is one of the most impressive places I've ever been to. And the way they do things, everything is to the nines. So this is, I think, where the 800 series is built, maybe the 700 series. And then all of the stuff goes down from there.
Yeah. So that's the home of the 800 series diamond and the Nautilus. And then what we do also is make some component parts in there, Dave, including the Continuum cone that go into our more affordable models, the 700s and 600s.
Fantastic. Well, Andy, we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And we're going to bring on our music merchandiser, Sujan Hong, and talk a little bit about the music that's coming up in the next, Friday. And then I'll come right back to you. Okay.
Cool. Good. Look forward to it.
Take care. Hello, Sujan.
Hi, I just got a phone call right as you call.
Of course you did.
So shutting that off.
That's when it always happens. As soon as yeah, right. Or the big ding. I finally found out that I turn everything off because, I get distracted easily anyway.
Yeah. So. My thing is, if I turn it off, I forget to turn it back on and then don't hear the phone.
Right. How are you doing? We got some good music coming up this week.
Yes, we have lots of great music coming up as usual. And I can dive right in.
Great. Why don't you go ahead and do that? I'm going to leave you, and we will see you in just a little while.
Great. Hey, folks. So we're going to lead off with our album of the week, which is the Rolling Stones' Goat's Head Soup. So this is the remastered deluxe edition of the Rolling Stones album. So this is the record that was released after Exile on Main Street at the end of that golden period of 1968 to 72, where the Stones put out, 4 consecutive greatest albums of all time. So this isn't quite one of those essential records, but you still have great tracks like Angie and Heartbreaker, and probably my favorite, Winter. The latter two with Billy Preston on keys, and coincidentally, it's his birthday today. He would have been 74 years old. The reissue comes packaged with a bunch of outtakes, as well as a live 1973 set, better known as the Brussels Affair, that was pieced together from 2 live shows. And it's all available to stream and download in $24.96 on Friday. Next up, we have Throwing Muses with Sun Racket. So these guys are a band from Newport, Rhode Island, that was founded by stepsisters Kristen Hirsch and Tanya Donnelly back in the early 80s. Donnelly would later leave the band and go on to co-found the Breeders and then Belly after that. But they kind of settled into a 3-piece and have been mostly dormant for the past 2 decades. This is just their second album in that time, and their first since 2003, I believe, or 2013, excuse me. But despite those long pauses, they sound like they haven't missed a beat. They've gotten louder with age, so you still have these, jagged, chugging guitars, and Hirsch's unique vocals, which somehow managed to be like graceful and kind of abrasive at the same time. This one will be out in 16-bit on the British indie label Fire. Next up, we have Afel Bokoum with Linde. And this is the new album from the Malian singer and guitarist. Bokoum got his start as a member of fellow Malian Ali Farka Touré's band when he was just a teenager. I think he was like 13. The late, great guitarist was also a mentor to Bokoum. So he's another artist, just like the Throwing Muses, who has sort of taken a leisurely approach to putting out music. He's put out a few albums with his band Alkibar, and he's been featured on others. He's worked with Damon Albarn, who is one of the co-executive producers on this. But this is just his second solo work since his 1999 debut. The music features traditional instruments like the calabash and the ngone. I'm not going to pronounce it, sorry. As well as trombone from Studio One session player Vin Gordon, and violin from Joan Wasser of Jonas Policewoman. And it creates these, organic grooves that you really get pulled into. And for me, that was the draw of this album. And we're going to have this in 24-bit high res from World Circuit on Friday. Next up, we have Angel Headed Hipster, the songs of Mark Bolan and T-Rex. So this was produced by Hal Wilner. So Hal was a producer and a music supervisor who worked on everything from tribute albums and concerts. He produced Saturday Night Live music skits. He produced albums by Lou Reed and Marianne Faithfull. Sadly, he died in April of this year from complications related to COVID-19. So Angel Headed Hipster may likely be the last project we'll get from Wilner. It's a tribute to the music of Mark Bolan of T-Rex, who died at age 29 in 1977. There are 26 tracks assembled from sessions spanning several years. It features an impressive cast of characters, including Nick Cave, Perry Farrell, Joan Jett, Kesha, Todd Rundgren, U2 with Elton John featuring, Lucinda Williams and Bill Frisell. So it's not a typical tribute album. I urge you to take a listen to this, as well as some of his other work, which are available on Qobuz. And finally, you may have heard that there is a new Lana Del Rey album expected. So there are a bunch of various release dates floating around. The label still tells us it's TBD. We've been getting a lot of customer service inquiries about this. But basically, when we have it, you'll have it. So just be patient and it will show up.
Thank you. Guy, this is always my favorite part of the show. First off, I hate hearing myself talk anyway. I love your information, Sujan. Okay, I got a question. Out of all the albums that we that you just talked about, what's the most exciting one to you? I've got mine already picked out.
Gosh, I cannot pick a favorite. Why don't you tell me your favorite?
Two. I can't wait to hear the Rolling Stones. I mean, that's just going to be. I have been blown away with some of the quality of the Stones recordings when they're coming out in high res. Some of them have been just totally stunning.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that one from sort of a throwback.
Yeah, some of the previous albums, they were all from the ABKCO catalog, and those guys, took so much care going back into the vaults and remastering it. They have an in-house producer engineer who does all this stuff. So they're just continuing the great work on remastering their catalog.
It's so cool. You've got so much knowledge of just like little things like that I find so fascinating. The other one that I'm really looking forward to, okay, how is Bill Frisell going to cover T-Rex? I can't wait to hear that one. You heard the one, I think it was East to West or something, where he covered Heard It Through the Grapevine.
Well, if anyone's going to interpret it into something magical, it's going to be Bill. He lives not too far from me in Brooklyn and did a street show a couple weeks ago.
Really?
He previewed tracks from his album Valentine that came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
He was pulling in from everything from What a Wonderful World to bits of, Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. So I just say trust in Bill,
Trust in Bill. I love that. Yeah, that's great. Listen, Sujan, thank you so much for taking your time. I know how busy you are. If you see a playlist or most anything special or different on Qobuz, all of the new info, this all goes through Sujan. She's got an extremely time-consuming job. Thank God. It's a labor of love, I think, for all of us, right?
It is indeed.
Just like Andy was saying, who we're just about to bring back, it really is all about the music. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. Look forward to next week.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
I should definitely spend some time with her. We could probably lose a few days.
Oh, Andy, it's like, just don't get three of us in the room together because,
So I have that the T-Rex tribute, the Nick Cave cover of Cosmic is just unbelievable. It's absolutely brilliant. In fact, I have it on one of my playlists. And little trivial bit, the Goat's Head Soup remaster was done at Abbey Road. Giles Martin actually did some of the work on the Atmos mixes on that. Would you like to guess which speakers they used?
Hold on. Yeah. Tell me. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I can't. We were talking about this earlier. The thing about Zoom that I really dig is you can put up the backgrounds, right? And so the first time I had met Andy, I had the Abbey Road studio pulled up in the background with the 800s, the three 800s across the front.
Yeah. Did I see, by the way, you posted the other day about "Wish You Were Here," right? Did I?
Yeah. So it is my favorite Pink Floyd album.
So you know how they got that guitar sound at the start of "Shining You Crazy Diamond" with Gilmour?
Yeah, no.
So the desk didn't have enough reverb time. They couldn't actually get the delay that they wanted on the desk to actually create that kind of haunting, melancholic kind of guitar that opens.
Yeah.
So Floyd used to hire out Abbey Road for like 6 months. I mean, it's just unheard of. Most bands would be like, a day, 2 days, 3 days. If you were the Beatles, you might take a bit longer, but most, Floyd would like to take it for 6 months and just try stuff. So they set Gilmour up in Studio One, right in the heart of Studio One. Now, Studio One is the big one. It's the concert orchestral one. It's where John Williams did like Duel of the Fates for Phantom Menace and stuff. It's huge. And they put him right in the middle with his guitar, and then they stuck all the mics at the end. And that's how they get that long, lingering kind of delay time from the guitar lick on "Shining You Crazy Diamond."
I was just listening to this the other night. It just hit me at about 12 o'clock, and I'm going, what would be really cool right now? So I turned off all the lights. I threw on "Wish You Were Here," and I was thinking I'm going to listen. I'm listening to maybe the first, song. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
get into the second one. Before I know it, it was like it was over, and I'm going, oh my God, I've got a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning. Hey,
Yeah.
we've got a question. One of the from Giles McCoy about running a hybrid music system.
Okay.
He's want to know what's would be economical, but would really work well with music. And thanks, Giles. He says especially when streaming Qobuz. So something that would sound really good with music, but also be very good for home theater. And
Oh,
how would
I'm
you
sorry.
set that up if you really wanted it to sound good with music as well? Because there is really a big difference if you're only watching movies or if you're using a hybrid system.
So there are so few AV amps out there, I think, or AVRs, whatever you want to call them, that actually do the music correctly. And I understand the question correctly, David. That's what we're referring to, something that can do 5.1 in stereo as well, right?
Yeah. It's like he wants to do a hybrid system and wants to know which of the best of the seven. And pull the question back up if you would again, Dan. Yeah. So if I want to run a stereo pair in a hybrid music TV space and be economical, which 600 series would I look at, especially when streaming Qobuz?
Oh, okay. So, the stereo pair, and be economical as well. I think if you still want it to be a hybrid system, you want the 603 tower at the front, and then you can scale elsewhere. So if you wanted to have a more affordable pair in the rears, then the 607s are perfectly fine for that choice. They still have ample space, ample room filling capability. Clearly, if you're going to do the job correctly, you want to buy a woofer, but you don't have to do that straight away. So if that's something you come up to later on, you come up to it later on. I think the key thing to get right is that AVR, because as I said, a lot of them they're so DSP driven. The front end is so much about digital signal processing and about manipulating sound in various ways. That getting a kind of clean signal path from a stereo perspective is quite hard. I think the guys at Arcam, which is another British company, do a good job. Stepping up the price points, it's not economical, but the guys at Anthem do great. So you have to pick your choices carefully. And I certainly say with an AVR, if you want it to do a good job in stereo, avoid features and go for muscle will be one key focus. A good quality amplifier is much more important than 56 different sound processing modes.
God, that is such a great point. No one has ever even brought that up in one of our talks yet, and you are so right. If you're going for the budget, $169, 7.1, 100 channel times 7, it's not, and it will not sound good. You're so right. Power or current or voltage is really important, not only in stereo amplifiers, but in home theater amplifiers as well. And they do tend to run a little more. But I would say if you're not going to do that, stick with a stereo amplifier. Just go get yourself a good stereo amplifier and do home theater 2-channel, because you will end up having a better sound all the way around. So what I think the outcome to this part of the discussion is, if you're going to do home theater, make sure you've got a good amplifier to do it with, or do it in stereo.
You know what, David? I think also the thing about good stereo, when it's done correctly, and again, we talked about it earlier on, right, is it can fill the room. I think people perhaps maybe have a misconception that if they're going to fill the room, they need to put speakers in multiple positions to fill the room. Now, clearly, you can do certain things more effectively with multiple speakers, like place a discrete sound over my shoulder. But if you want to take a sound bubble and kind of make it high and make it wide and maybe even bring it towards me in the room, you can do that with stereo. You can do that with well set up stereo without any problem at all.
Absolutely, especially if the speaker's image, like we were talking before. Yeah. I mean, it really should sound like the voice is coming from the TV. Yeah, for sure. If it doesn't, you probably don't have them set up right. Or you don't have them set up right, or even worse, you've got a horrible little front end. But if you're looking, I would say if I were doing it for myself, if I were on a hard budget, I would absolutely go for a better stereo amplifier and a pair of speakers. And I think you'll be more pleased than going with 100 speakers with a bad amp.
Is another subtle one, but it's relevant, right? You see a ton of systems set up this way. I think a lot of our guys watching this will nod, because they fix this problem all the time. It's a commonplace thing when people buy a big screen TV, that they buy a big credenza, some piece of furniture to put between the speakers, and then they tuck the speakers in really tight either side. That's not going to do your imaging any favors at all. So try and get the speakers a little bit away, maybe even try and get the credenza and the screen a bit further back, and then try and get some toe in on those speakers, and you're going to help your imaging a ton. The least good thing to put on a wall surface between two speakers is a big reflective panel, but that just happens to be what a TV screen is. So if you can kind of get it out the picture as best as you possibly can by maybe moving it a bit further back, you're going to help that imaging work so much better.
Great. That's fantastic advice. And if you do happen to be the kind of person who absolutely has to have things built in, so it's more hidden, Bowers & Wilkins has got a phenomenal architectural line.
Oh, for sure.
That you can just build stuff in. So really kind of the bottom line is, if you're going to do it, do it right, or don't do it at all. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you saying that. That's a lot of integrity, because, you know, it's like you could sell 7 speakers or you could sell 2. And I appreciate the fact that if you're going to do it right, then go ahead and get 7. If you're going to compromise, get 2. Most people wouldn't say that. I appreciate that.
You know what? Some of the, again, go back in that earlier point, right? Some of the rules and some of the things, the guidance that we have in audio are actually really simple. I think it's just that they're not explained very well. Give you one real good example, right? So how many times do you see this in people's homes where they maybe have one speaker lower down, maybe there's one sitting on the floor, and then maybe there's one up here on a shelf. And you see that a ton of times. Particularly, it's quite a commonplace thing in kind of design interior magazines. Whenever people have audio systems, they kind of put one speaker down on the floor because it looks kind of hipster and cool, and there's one kind of sitting up here on the shelf because that goes where it goes. But that just does not make any sense. That's a bit like going to a concert, right, where there's like a cool little 3-piece on the stage kind of playing to you, I don't know, the Beatles, and you've got like a guitarist, and then the drummer's like 25 feet above them. Why, you know, that wouldn't work, and you know that instinctively wouldn't work, and you don't need any more explanation than that to know that wouldn't work. But having stereo imaging where one speaker's down here and one speaker's up here, that's going to be the same thing. Portions of the soundstage are going to be doing that. And
well, you know, if someone does that, I mean, really, it's I think almost anyone that would do that on purpose would be a background or a passive listener. And I would really say to that person, look, if this is what you're going to do, just you know, get a good tabletop. You know, I mean, seriously, if it's not going to image anyway, you might as well just get a good tabletop. I mean, you guys still are making the Zeppelin, right?
Well, not right now, but we're making equivalents, absolutely. And yeah, for sure, absolutely. Listen, again, I'm trying to say it the other way around. It's not a case of like, this is what you must buy. It's more a case of don't freak out about like getting the right installation in your home. Don't be overly concerned about it. If it feels logical to you, it probably is. You know what? Like if I'm going to, and we've spoken about this before, if I'm going to speak to you, guess what? I'm probably going to look at you. So, you know, if I wanted my speakers to play to me, point them in the direction that I'm sitting in.
That's a great analogy.
It's just simple, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
If I want to listen and I'm sitting down, well, I probably want the speakers to be kind of roughly where my ears are, not on the floor, because I don't have ears in my feet. So put the speakers roughly where my ears are, where I'm sitting down. Again, you know, it's just logical stuff.
Great advice. Let's take a couple questions. There was one just before this that I was trying to get to, but there was a question: is the 700 series powered at all, or they're just passive?
So we have an active range, a powered range, which is the Formation range, with Formation Duo in particular being the model that can occupy that. So that's an actively powered, in fact, dual amplified model with a 6.5-inch cone and the tweeter straight out the 700 series, the carbon dome tweeter. So if an active product with no additional componentry is what you require, that's our solution for you. 700 series, along with 800s and 600s, is a passive range, and that's partially about choices in terms of design, but it's also about the value. Yeah,
Dan, throw up the other the last question you just had on there. besides the yearly progression of technology, are there any other factors or even inspirations that inform B&W and the design of their new speakers? What I guess, yeah.
Always. I mean, there's multiple things, right? I think from a technical perspective, there's always this research track going on, like the commentator asks, in fact. So there's always something new happening in the background, and we're always trying to find ways to bring that in. One of the issues that we have with our engineering team is, trying to get them to stop occasionally and kind of just chill out for a minute, guys. Let's try and put in what you've come up with now before you come up with the next thing. But that's kind of how they roll. So we're never short of new technologies to put in. I think the other thing was we definitely have to be aware of the outside world in terms of what people expect these days in their homes, and that's partially an aesthetic thing. Just as an example, you look at the 600 series, we've introduced that oak finish that you saw earlier on.
It's really pretty.
Yeah, it's cool, right? But again, that's just reflecting, frankly, current trends. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, it has nothing at all to do with acoustics. But at the same time, these things have to live in your home. And you have to want to have them in your home. So we have to recognize that somewhere along the line, they have to be, attractive and desirable too. So I think it's an awareness of current consumer buying patterns or consumer trends. We definitely also have this mindset that we have different tools for different tasks, if you like. So the simplest way is to think about it is the 800 series diamond is literally no holds barred. That's everything from the professional grade studio guys through to the absolute dyed in the wool hardcore audiophile. The 700 series brings elements of that, takes the price ticket down a bit, is our most extensive range because it's got something literally in every size category. So we have 3 towers, we have 3 bookshelves. This range is all about that point about, hey, do you just like music? Do you not necessarily have any kind of preconceptions about what to buy, but you just want to get better sound? Go buy this then. This is the one. So it's, like I say, it's really important that we don't make it too expensive, that we never drive too much into it that pushes it away from that attainability. Do you know what I mean?
Speaking of aesthetics, what flavors do they come in? They come in obviously black.
Yeah, obviously black. It's so funny. Every so often we have that conversation about, should we try not to do a black speaker now? And then the black speakers we sell in the US, and we go, no, we're carrying on doing black speakers. You guys like black speakers. We have a white, which I'll be honest is probably more popular in European markets.
It is, yeah.
We have the oak now introduced. In Asia markets, we also have a cherry finish, which is mostly designed to support their particular requirements and tastes. It's not going to be available in the US.
Okay, this one is a really good one, and I cannot believe, out of all the hours that you and I have spent on the phone, I have not asked you. Oh, that's not it. It's like, hold on. Here we go. What speakers do you use at home? I cannot believe we haven't talked about this.
So I have lots of speakers at home. So I have
What's your main, like when you go and you sit down and you go, this is my system. What's that?
800 series diamonds in the main system. Pair of 707s in the study. Distributed audio system in multiple rooms with in-ceiling products from our CI range. I use in-ceiling and in-wall for the theatre system as well. There are a lot of systems in my life, and multiple pairs of headphones and stuff. You can't get away from it. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Rager turntables. I have a Rager turntable which I adore. I've had it for quite a few years now, and it gets a ton of use. This little system over my shoulder is powered by Name Audio Electronics, which I really like. And then the main system is as I say, 800 series diamond. So it's all right. It's quite nice.
We have so much in common. I don't think there's a single room in the house that doesn't have audio in it.
Yeah.
And we just had this.
Yeah, my wife loves it.
So here's the thing. We just had this big deck outside redone. And this thing is huge. It's like maybe 40 by 14. I mean, it's a really big area outside. And so that's my next area that I've got to.
Well, it just so happens we have a model that will be able to help you there called the AM1, designed by our formerly departed and still very wonderful acoustic engineer, Dr. John Dibb. So That would be a great choice, a great sounding speaker.
So I'm talking to Dan, our managing director, who, by the way, is producing the show today. Thank you very much, Dan. And so over the last couple of years that Dan and I have known each other, we've been talking speakers. It's like, dude, you gotta belly up. And so he's become this really, really big fan. And so last week we were talking, he's going, Dave, should I do the 803s or the 804s? I'm going, man, I want you to get the 803s, if not the 802s, but I want you to get that. I think you'll like that. And so, but recommending speakers like this to someone is like, going, oh, I think you're going to definitely like Caviar. You got to make sure they love the Caviar. So I'm going, okay, Dan, here's what you got to do. You got to find some place open in New York. You've got to go in there and you got to listen. This is when it comes at this level, you've got to make, you got to make your own choice.
Yeah, but you know what? I think the other side of that coin, and this is a really relevant thing about all of this stuff that we do, and not just us, everybody in our audio space, is this is an investment, right? It's not just I don't think it's a consumer good. Most consumer goods are disposable inherently, somewhere along the line, whether you're recycling them or you're passing them on to a friend or whatever it might be. Somewhere along the line, these high definition TVs that you bought 4 or 5 years ago just become irrelevant. Same with the phone in your pocket and all those other things. The speaker that you buy today for X thousand bucks is still going to be worth a few $1,000s in 5 years' time. And it's still going to work fine, and it probably won't be obsolete. And I think that's the difference in speaker technology. It's particularly if it's a well-made speaker, right? They last and they retain their value. As you guys, I'm sure all know, there's a very healthy market in used, reused, pre-loved, however you want to call it, premium product.
I could not agree more. That's the thing that I typically hang on to the longest in my systems. Once you get one that you love, it's a lot like your favorite wine. You're going, this is just as good of a glass of wine, if not better, than it was 5 years ago when I tasted it for the first time.
I think, let's be honest as well, the other reason is, don't forget that point again, sorry to come back on it, but it's relevant, right? What is it doing for you? It's connecting you with something that you care about on an emotional level. I think, again, a good friend of mine in the US, Doug, is a big fan of cameras, and he'll tell you the same. I think people get obsessed in camera lenses for the same reason, because what they do is they take a human experience and they turn it into something that you can carry with you and relate to in the home experience. And what we do is that, when we're working on what we're working on, when we're listening to what we're listening to, we're trying to kind of take the experience of performers and creative people and experiences and times and places and then bring them into other people's homes and create that emotional connection. And if they do it right, they're just going to keep on doing it, and you're going to carry on caring. Do you see what I mean? Whereas some of the products, every time you become bored, you don't become bored of speakers if they're done right.
I could not agree with you more. Like I say, I'm happy in 2 rooms, and then every other room you're going, oh, I wish I did a little more of this or a little less of this. But the older I get, the better the systems are getting. Hey, Dan, Mark Block you had put up a question for Mark Block, and I'd like to get Andy's take on this if you don't mind pulling that back up. Mark is one of the leaders of one of the audiophile clubs in the United States, but he is such a real guy. He's just a wonderful person, and I sit in every now and then on their audiophile discussions, but it doesn't seem like an audiophile group. It seems like just a bunch of great guys talking about music and gear that they dig. And so he's got a question here. What design trade-offs can be made between speaker sensitivity and bass response with small monitors? I prefer more bass with lower sensitivity, but many audiophiles like lower power amps and need the sensitivity. I think that's just a build philosophy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's also a target price and a target market, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a great question. And I can give you some great illustrative examples. The 707's over my shoulder, 5-inch system. And we did exactly what he described there. So there's a lower sensitivity in there. They're like an 84 dB per watt per meter kind of sensitivity, and we're trading that off are getting a considerable increase in extension out of the enclosure. So the port tuning allows us to kind of really achieve that. That's fine, because although it's a compact product, it's a relatively speaking quite premium product. Some of you guys also might remember a model we had 6 or 7 years ago called PM1, and that was another example of that. With a 607, it's a 5-inch system, but it's a ton more affordable. And our perspective is, because it's a ton more affordable, the potential buyer is unlikely only going to want to partner it with like a 30 watt, 40 watt, 50 watt amplifier, as opposed to like an 80, 90, 100, 110. So in that model, you have to kind of do that exact discussion that you're having there about trading the offset against response, against sensitivity. So we're pushing closer to like an 87, 88 dB per watt per meter kind of sensitivity on that product. And yes, that has some choices in terms of extension, but I think it's the right thing to do for the price. So we can flex would be the best way to describe it, to suit requirement. Obviously, literage in a cabinet, literage. When we're talking to volume, acoustic volume. Sorry, you guys don't do metric, do you? Acoustic volume and cone area kind of help, right? So if you go up to something like an 805, it's still a bookshelf model, but it's a ton larger in terms of the internal volume. That becomes less of an issue. But certainly in a smaller 5-inch system, it's something that we concentrate a lot on.
Mark Stahl's got a good question, and I think a lot of people have just got huge misconceptions. I've heard this about your brand and other brands that I go, wow, you know what? It's 2020, and things have gotten, I think, a lot more consistent. I know in the Bowers and Wilkins line they have, but he's going, what kind of tone do the 607s have? Are they bright, warm, etc.? And I'm dying to hear what you're going to say about this.
True is what they are. We work to a concept that we refer to as true sound. We absolutely positively do not want to introduce any form of tone variation, tonal adjustment to the creative process of the performer, right? It's not a Bowers and Wilkins interpretation of what a guy like Christopher wants to achieve, or another performer. It's what he wants to achieve, and it's our job to relay it. So we don't aim for AN given tonality, or AN given lift in the mid-range response, or extension in the bass response, artificially, that is to say. We're trying to achieve the most neutral given response that we can. And in particular, in terms of tonality, it's about accuracy. Now, to be clear by that, if you then put in a recording, which is bright sounding,
it's going to be bright
and aggressive, guess what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And if you put in a recording that's warm, again, guess what's going to happen? And we believe that's the right thing to do, because like I say, it's our job not to interpret the performer's intentions, but to relay the performer's intentions as faithfully or as truly as we possibly can.
That is so true. That is exactly, that's been my experience with Bowers and Wilkins for quite some time now, and it really is the way it should be. I'd like to point out that in the last, and you could probably narrow this down for me, Andy, but it's certainly in the last 8 to 10 years, the tweeter technology that you guys have developed and that have brought it down to the lower range it's an amazing technology. And if the buried question was, are they bright? Will they hurt my ears? That I haven't seen that in a long time. There was a time back in the 80s, 90s, even really early 2000s, that there were speakers that were totally detached from their tweeter, that you just that tweeter makes a noise that doesn't conform with the rest of the system. That has not been my experience with Bowers and Wilkins for a long time.
Yeah, well, thank you. And obviously that's the intent, right? But it's also what we're trying to engineer all the time. And we adhere to a common philosophy across all three ranges, pardon me, in terms of the design approach and the way we do it. So they all work the same way. We don't.
So do you find there's a family sound, basically?
Well, it's partially that. It's also just the principles behind it, David. So if you think about, I mentioned this earlier on, right? So let's look at that 606, the star of the film. The continuum cone in a 606 is the same as the continuum cone in an 805. I mentioned that earlier on, and
right,
clearly through 706 as well. So if we jumped around in a philosophy and approach on the high frequency, and use different technologies, it'd be very difficult to kind of maintain that consistency of approach moving up through the ranges. What we want to do is simply add resolution, essentially add quality as you step up. So they all work in fundamentally the same ways. They're all pistonic. In other words, they're all stiff domes that don't flex. And essentially, as we move upwards, we can get more exotic in how we do it. We can use more exotic materials and processes to help us get to the nirvana of hopefully a dome that doesn't distort at all. But clearly every dome distorts to some degree. But so it's either aluminium, sorry, British aluminium. I know you say aluminum.
No, it's aluminium is so much better.
It's aluminium in the 600 series. It's a carbon treated dome in the 700 series, and then it's the diamond, which is artificially grown diamond.
Right. Yeah.
Series.
Amazing, Andy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. I just got word from Dan that time is up, so I'm gonna sign off for us. But would you please come back and see us again and be a guest on the live stream?
I'd love to. There's one thing, you know what? Because again, we've done it again, right? We've done the rabbit holes, and we haven't really talked about the playlist. And can I just say one line of the playlist? Is
absolutely
that cool?
Yeah. In fact, we don't even have to go right now. But if some people have planned to an hour. If you've got to go, then Andy and I are going to continue for another few minutes, and we'll finish.
I'm quite happy to stay if people want to stay and watch. It's no problem with me. The reason I wanted to talk about it is because you'll find it kind of interesting, I hope, and different, and maybe challenging compared to what you're used to. And I think it's really important to kind of explain the philosophy and the idea behind it, right? So for each given year, over the 25 years that we're trying to celebrate, which is going back to 1995, which is when we first launched the 600 series, we're trying to pull out a piece of music that's new to you, potentially. So if you've got a really broad range of knowledge, like Sujan obviously has from earlier on as well, and I say we've got to spend some time, you'll recognize some of those performers, you recognize some of those acts. If you haven't, hopefully along the way, you'll find something that you kind of go, hey, wow, that's awesome. I'd never heard that before. Funny enough, I was sharing the playlist with a couple of my friends in the industry, funny enough, including Christopher, and he got turned on to a guy that he'd never heard before called Trent Moller, and he's a music producer. And so is Christopher. So, that's a perfect example of what the intent here is. There may be some pieces that you don't like. That's okay. Because remember me saying this last time, there's no such thing as bad music. There's just music that you don't like. That's okay too. But find the time to listen to it, because along the way, they're all great sounding. Clearly, we want to achieve that. They're all diverse. And again, we wanted to try and do that. It's deliberately eclectic. But we've avoided the obvious. We've deliberately not gone for, I don't know, Radiohead's OK Computer or Massive Attack's Mezzanine or, Eminem. Pick your kind of monster albums of the last 25 years, and they're not there. And that doesn't mean we don't know who those performers are. It just means the intent here is to not go for the obvious. The intent is to go the other way.
So I was listening to this thing. I was like, when you give me a playlist, I always listen to them. So I was listening to this this morning before we were getting going, and you're right. It's like so much of this stuff I didn't know, and I'm embarrassed to say this. I knew very little of the music that you had picked, and three of my favorite ones I'd never even heard. The first one, "Working for the Man" by PJ Harvey. I've been actually meaning to listen to this, but I haven't gotten around to it. Wow.
Oh yeah, it's filthy, right?
Yeah, it's so dark. And then what is the Boards of Canada?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Check this playlist out, guys, because really, just like the last one that Andy did, I found myself listening to the playlist, but these people that I didn't know, I would like go to their albums, and I'm rabbit holing the heck out of your playlist. They're very good. I love the historical part that you've got here.
I think, listen, that's the point, right? I mean, ultimately, here's the intent. And rabbit holing is a great way of describing it. Some of these guns you just can go, don't like, and move on. Some of them you'll just go and you'll lose yourself. And I remember I said this last time around, but I'm going to say it again. That's why people like music, right? That's why people love music. And that's why people who love music love it even more when they find new stuff. So we want this to kind of become a little playlist version of something where people are sharing new stuff with each other all the time. We're going to actually build out this concept story over the next few months and do more of these 25 track discovery playlists. We're going to bring in some producer friends and kind of put together a kind of piece where we have people throwing together their own versions of what we've just discussed and what we've just put together. Because what we want is, by the end of it, for a ton of people who are fans of the brand to have discovered a ton of music that they didn't know about before. And that's just going to make their lives better. And that's the essence of For the Love of Music.
We should actually do a live stream only about music. There's 2 or 3 of my good buddies that we could get on this, and I'd love to get Sue Jan in on this as well, because she will absolutely have a different take than the rest of us will. But doing just a live stream about the music in general, not about Qobuz or any brand, just this is what we're finding with this album. And showing people this, what ends up happening, and there's been many studies on this. We all have our 100 albums.
Oh yeah,
and we revolve around those 100 albums, and it's the thing that's where we grew up on. Typically, this is 100%, but most people have got about 100 albums that they did. So when you can meet people like, for me, Andy, that turns me on to these people that I'm going, how have I missed this? It's so incredible. How did I miss that? Then I have a huge appreciation for that, because I want to get way outside that 100 album thing. I want to be in the thousands, because every time you hear something, it just expands. It expands your knowledge of music and your appreciation. I think, at least it does for me.
It's like your point before, right? Do you want to just spend the rest of your life just drinking one beer? And let's say you don't drink beer, right? So let's say, do you want to just spend the rest of your life just, I don't know, eating one meal?
Yeah, right.
It's pretty dull.
Yeah.
So try something, and don't be afraid to try it. And
we're not going to take that analogy any further. We're not going to take that analogy any further than eating the same.
But it's the wonderful thing about the world that we live in, David. It's the wonderful thing about what you guys offer, right? Because you can do it risk-free.
Right.
I mean, in my world, when you and I can relate, right? When we were growing up and you wanted to discover new music, you either listened to the radio for a ton of time, or you kind of recorded those late night, illicit music stations that your parents didn't want you to listen to, or you went and bought a record. And that was the only way. Now it's risk-free. Just try it. Try it. If you don't like it, don't listen to it again. But do try it is the key point. And that's what we need to encourage people to do if the music industry is going to continue to thrive and survive, because there's so much great stuff out there, man. And the great thing about, hopefully, what this playlist kind of draws attention to, a bit like the last one, is you don't have to just demonstrate with like Niels Lofgren and I don't know, the Eagles, if you want to demonstrate hi-fi and show off the virtue of it. To the exact analogy that you were talking about 20 minutes ago with your daughter, we need to play the people who are listening to this stuff, the music that they want to hear, and we need to learn also the new music that makes us feel better about our lives. Otherwise, what are we doing this for?
So the audience that's out there, if you've got kids and they've got playlists, it would be awesome if you could maybe share those playlists with us on Qobuz or Streaming Music Matters or the Bowers and Wilkins. We all need to know what turns the next generation on, and then, like Andy said, stuff that that we don't know that you think is really cool. Let's share music. It's so much fun. Andy, we are going to have to call it quits, but man, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you again for having me on. And I appreciate you letting me come back on despite what happened last time. But
we're not going to talk about that. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday because we don't have anything special. But if Bowers and Wilkins, the next time they call up and they go, "Hey Dave, we're going to launch on Tuesday," I will move this thing for those guys. They're an important enough partner and a lot of fun to talk to. So thanks a lot, everybody. And with that, we will say goodbye.